The nation, shocked by a loss too deep for words, mourns a great and gallant leader. With his burial at his ancestral home at Hyde Park, an historic chapter in our national life comes to an end. Official Washington is stunned by the president's sudden death. The cabinet assembles as a dark cloud of tragedy hangs over the Capitol. Among the dignitaries is General Marshall wearing a mourning band. Now, in a simple ceremony, Harry S. Truman takes the presidential oath. On his shoulders fall grave responsibilities in one of the most critical periods of our history. The president's last official appearance was before Congress early in March, when he reported on the historic Yalta Conference. It was the first time he had remained seated while addressing Congress. 1933, and the beginnings of Mr. Roosevelt's unprecedented 12 years of national leadership. An America racked by crisis and depression heard brave words geared for action.
Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
And then came the most startling program of national measures in our history. The 100 days, NRA, bank stabilization, vast public works programs. On a tour of South America, FDR laid the basis for the good neighbor policy, the beginning of the United Nations. The brief hours he could spare from his official desk were mainly spent at Hyde Park. His beloved mother, Sarah Delano Roosevelt, was a familiar companion, and there were moments to look back on his dramatic career. As a young state senator, Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Governor of New York, his heroic courage conquering physical misfortune. Here the Roosevelts entertained King George and Queen Elizabeth as the world balanced on the edge of war. Many royal visitors came to Hyde Park. Here, too, the president loved to gather about him the members of his growing family. And this wartime Christmas found 3 of his sons, as at the time of his death, serving their country overseas. In January of this year, he took office for a 4th term after a difficult and grueling campaign. Even then, the nation was gravely worried about its president's health.
And will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
As Commander-in-Chief, he had the vision to foresee the crisis of our time and the courage to meet that crisis with bold leadership. Even before this last inauguration, he was, as his friend Winston Churchill described him, a tower of strength in a world at war. And after Pearl Harbor, the nation rallied to his unforgettable fighting words.
How long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory.
All through the war, he worked for unity, fought for unity, building the great coalition of the United Nations. At Casablanca, he brought Giraud and de Gaulle together. And on a distant battlefront, he reviewed the men who had won the North African campaign. Then Tehran, December 1943, and one more great step forward toward victory and peace. The foreign policy he had shaped in the darkest hours of war was meeting the test. In the Pacific, where with Admiral Nimitz and General MacArthur, he reviewed the plans for final victory over Japan. A keen strategist himself, his talent and skill made themselves felt throughout the world. An internationalist, his meeting with Allied leaders at Quebec forged one more strong link in the chain of unity. Then Yalta, and with victory clearly ahead, he carried on the good fight, though tired, ill, and obviously showing the signs of a grinding schedule of work. More than any man, he had led us through indecision to certainty. What he had worked for, even as far back as 1941, was a basis for a peace that would endure. His death at 63 came on the very eve of victory, his plans for peace ensured. The conference in San Francisco, on which he counted so much, will go forward. The peace must reward his courage and his faith. Franklin Roosevelt was for 12 years the president of 130 million Americans who feel a sense of incalculable loss that his leadership in this critical hour is missing. To the millions of men on the battlefronts of the world, he was a gallant commander-in-chief. And to the people of many nations who had met the challenge of a world crisis, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the symbol of a final day of triumph, a day when men of all nations would enter a world of true freedom out of the darkness of suffering and war, a world for which the United Nations have suffered so much and fought so well. No finer monument could stand in his honor than an enduring peace. History will honor Franklin Roosevelt, President, Commander-in-Chief, humanitarian,